Today is May the 10th, 1440. Grand rising to the Moors. Just a couple of things that I want to mention before we get into our sharing session. And also, Moors, be prepared to share at whenever you get ready to do that. The first thing that I want to say is we know that there is a lot going on that is outside of our jurisdiction. And when I say outside of our jurisdiction, we're talking colonizers and commercial mercenaries. That is not our jurisdiction. That is an inferior jurisdiction. So, and they have a lot going on down there. And so I wanted to, and you all are well aware of this, but I just wanted to make a suggestion that we be sure to monitor our intake of colonial news and of foreign news, because all of that stuff is foreign to us. It is not, that's not our news. And a lot of the stuff that they have put out there is, it's to create fear on our land. And we don't live in fear at all, not of anything nor of anyone. And so we are, it is suggested, because you can't tell sovereigns what to do, you can only make suggestions, and then the sovereigns do their study, and they use their better judgment. But we want to ensure that we take in twice as much information about ourselves and about the Moors by way of videos and reading and YouTube and our studies, wherever our studies lead us, in terms of there's so many other great avenues of information that we can be taking into our spirit, because information has energy. Everyone knows that, that information has energy. And this is how we know that that information has energy. You can receive a piece of information and it may not even be true, but it will change your energy altogether. It will change your energy. And that is someone outside of you attempting to direct your energy. And so we want to be sure that we take in, yes, we kind of look at what they're doing because they're on our land, and anything that we see that's not right, we judge it. We call them into our court and we judge it. But aside from looking at it from our supreme sovereign place, the rest of that is just a bunch of noise, and it's a bunch of low-lying energy that we don't need to take into our spirit. So, and that way we can continue to operate in unity and continue to operate together as a nation, as one, and that way we speak the same, we speak with one voice. We don't say the same things because we're all sovereign and we have different thinking minds, but we speak with one voice when we speak as a nation. And the energy, the low-lying energies will try to control that narrative. And we're not going to ever, ever allow that to happen again between us in our nation. So we do want to monitor how much of that stuff we take in. Yes, we're watching, and we have some court actions that we're going to be doing to get some of that stuff in order. But ultimately, that's the only reason that we even bother looking at what they're doing, is to judge it and make sure that the things that go on our land as they are exiting are in alignment with the law. We know that they attempted to control our history, and that is actually energy that they were attempting to inject into us and into our thinking so that we never came to this point that we're at right now. This point that we're at right now is a beautiful point because this place is a sovereign jurisdiction that says we actually are a nation. We actually are a government. We've never not been a government. We've always been the government. And now we know it. And so it's important that we guard our ear gates and our eye gates and our spirit gates, because that is the north gate. That is the north gate. We are the living north gate. So that corporate capitalist news and all of that, it only seeks to confuse us about who's in charge and confuse us about, it seeks to do that, but we know who's in charge. We also know that it uses language that is inferior to the Phoenician language, which is what we speak. And Phoenician language sounds almost exactly like their corporate fake English. In fact, it does sound like it. We're speaking right now in Phoenician language. This is ancient English. The spelling is different and the definitions are different. It means something different. Sounds the same, but means something different. And they've been doing the reverse of that the whole time. So they would say a name, but we don't have names, we have knowns. G-N-O-M-E. Look that word up, known. We have knowns. Known means intelligent thought. So they took the word known and changed it into N-A-M-E, which is an animal term. It's a slave term. And we're not either of those. So when they're giving their capitalist news, they're making sure they put lots of words on the screen. And those words are absolutely misspelled. Every last one of them is misspelled, with very few exceptions. The way that we spell is the sovereign way to spell. It's the right way to spell. So that's why we have to monitor, how much of that we take in and guard our ear gates and eye gates so that we stay on focus with our nation building. Nation building is our focus. Anyone attempting to, when you hear a lot of noise from that corporate capitalist side over there, there's a lot of noise because they want people to continue to stay confused. That's what all that noise is about. Whenever there's a quote-unquote press conference, it's called a press conference because it is an act of force. They're trying to force information onto the heirs. And 9.5, actually 10 out of 10 times, that information is hypothecated and false. Now, when you take that same information and you put it in Phoenician terms, it changes the meaning of it. So it will sound like we're saying the same thing, but we're not, because we have already, what I call, the word finesse comes from Phoenician, and the word finish comes from Phoenician. And if you look on the treaty, there's someone there, he said he signed as finish. That is a hypothecation of Phoenician. And we know Phoenician From that word comes phone and phonics and etc. So we would not even be thinking about things like COVID-19. We wouldn't even be thinking about that if we weren't watching that information that they keep trying to press on to us. We wouldn't even be thinking about it, because when you step outside your door, if it wasn't for people wearing masks, you would not know. If it wasn't for people wearing masks, because you step outside, the sun is still shining, everyone is still going about their day. You wouldn't know. So even with regard to social media, with social media, we guard what we see on there, because one of the very most important, the most important thing to me, just from my perspective, and others have other perspectives and we honor them, but from my perspective, from what I'm seeing, the things that are being said to elicit energy from us, because if the enjoinder does not happen and we don't join with them or give them consent to join with us, then they have no reason to be here. So enjoinder, and if you look that word up in the dictionary, the law dictionaries, the older ones, you will find out that it really is intercourse or interaction, engagement, and it's kind of sort of a war term, enjoinder. That's when two things that are not alike, one of them comes together with the other forcefully in order to take from the other. That's what enjoinder really is. And in our case, it would be the dead, which is them, seeking to enjoin with the living. And that information that they press on to us, or attempt to press on to us, because it doesn't really work, if we don't pay attention to it and don't respond to it, because I see right now in their fake news media where they're attempting to press information onto us in order to get some energy from us, they keep putting forward this story of two Albions who killed one of us or more. Well, that happens every day in those fake courts, and I'm not minimizing that, because it is major. It is major, and there is judgment to follow. There is judgment to follow. No act goes unjudged on our land. No act goes unjudged on our land at all. Okay? And so, in reality, they have to answer for that. But what I'm saying, my point is, with regard to their news, is that they're seeking to enjoin with us again because they want some energy from us. They want some living energy. Living energy. And that's why they come into, the minute we stopped paying attention to them and started nation building on these calls and the different things that we do, our focus was off of them, so then they had to come over here and try to get some energy and some reaction from us. And that is a very key bit of evidence to prove that the more we focus on ourselves, they do things and do things and do things in order to gain some energy from us. Okay? I'm going to go ahead. If there's any noise in the background, I'll go ahead and mute that. So it is incumbent upon us, even when they come into these venues, that we're in. When they come in here, if no one says anything, if we don't respond, we just give whoever's hosting that call the opportunity to put them out. They won't get anything that they're seeking. They won't get our energy. And that is the one thing. Because, see, if they can get our attention, they can then seek to enjoin with us. And we know that consent comes out of our mouths. That is where 99.9% of the Moors who have been taken, that is where the supposed or presumed consent comes from, is the minute we open our mouths and start talking to them. That is where, when I was taken in 2017, that's where it came from. I rolled down my window and I started talking to the policy enforcer. And I was in the right. I hadn't done anything, didn't run a light, didn't do any of that stuff, because I'm traveling in the jurisdiction of my ancestral inherited estate. Didn't have their tag. I had moorishe ID and everything. But because I spoke to him, he saw enjoinder right away. And the minute they get our enjoinder and consent from us, then they take our sovereignty and use it against us, because we're not supposed to enjoin with them, ever. So now I'm thinking, okay, well, all we're doing is nation building. Why would they be so angry about nation building? Why would they keep showing up here like that? Now I know. They want to get us talking to them again. And they'll ask questions in order to gain some consent of some kind to keep coming here. So we don't talk to them anymore. And some might say, well, that's childish. You should deal with them. Nope. No. There's something higher going on here. There's something spiritual going on here. Okay? There's something spiritual going on here. And that spiritual energy that's going on is energy that we can keep and just share among one another and assist one another and help one another instead of feeding the dead. Now, I'm not saying that all Albions are that way. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that there's an energy that was operating on our land that was that way. We have done a lot to mute that energy, but we have to keep going. And again, they're giving us a hint by covering their mouths. We're not supposed to talk to them. I was talking to someone here in this territory. Well, and of course, I was just going about my business and they stopped me and called me. We don't think about all of this, and that is changing. That's changing definitely as we're going about our day and running errands and things like that. But after that interaction with the Albion happened, I realized then what just happened. She kept asking questions, just like a policy enforcer. What do you think about that? And, do you agree with that? And blah, blah, blah. She would say things, and do you agree with that? And I'm thinking to myself, this don't even feel right here. What do you care what I think? All this time you've been ignoring me, and all of a sudden you care what I think? No, you don't. And the minute she had the opportunity, the first thing that came out of her mouth was, well, I'll just go with you. Enjoined her. She wants consent to join with the living. They know the game. That's their game plan. Get them talking, and then you can get consent, and then you can enjoin with them. And when you enjoin with them, then you can just turn them over to the policy enforcers and say, I got another one. And so it wasn't until after that interaction that I realized the pattern. It's a pattern. They've been doing it for hundreds of years. It's a pattern. So one thing I really want us to know, too, about all that's going on is we're free to go wherever we want to go. There are some genetically modified products and things like that that are leaving our land. Let's let that happen. Let's let that happen. That needs to happen. They're destroying a whole lot of that genetically modified stuff, and those who listen to that corporate capitalist narrative will think that they're not going to be able, that we're not going to be able to eat because they're destroying things and there's a shortage. But let's look up the word shortage and see what it really means, because it doesn't mean what they told us it meant. It doesn't. We'll look that up do that on just take a minute when you have some time and look up the word shortage. Doesn't mean what, just like the word loan doesn't mean what we thought it meant. Just like we were not who they said we were. Okay? It's crazy. Because every time I hear a word now that they use regularly, I go look it up. And when I look it up, it never means what they told us it meant. Never. And that's why we are starting now to look at the language that we use and the words that we use. And then so that we will know why they use it so often. You see. So let's look at the word mother. And if you have an older dictionary, look the word up, and anyone who has an older dictionary who wants to read that definition, go ahead and read it so that we can see. There are several different definitions that are going to be there. If you have an unabridged dictionary, look at some of the older, the definitions further down, because the newer definitions will be at the top usually in an unabridged dictionary. So then we look past the newer changed definitions and we look at the ones that are further down. So if anyone has an older dictionary and you've looked up the noun, looked up the word mother as a noun, if you'll just unmute and read it. And to unmute, you just *6. And then I'll read to you the one I have as well. Some of those definitions, you're not going to like them. Let me just tell you up front.
All right, you ready, Empress?
Yes.
All right, it says mother, noun, a female that has borne an offspring. 2, a female who has adopted a child or otherwise established a maternal relationship with another person. 3, a creative or environmental source. In quotation, religion is the mother of the sciences. End quote. 4, a woman having some of the responsibilities of a mother, a house mother. 5, qualities attributed to a mother, such as capacity to love, a baby that appealed to the mother in her. Then 2, I'm reading from an older, I am reading from the American Heritage Dictionary of the English language. All right, so then 2, second definition of mother. Where'd it go? A stringy slime composed of yeast cells and bacteria that forms on the surface of fermenting liquids. It is added to wine or cider to start production of vinegar, also called mother of vinegar.
Islam. Someone said they have a completely different definition. Thank you, Justice Tariq. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's something slimy, and it's a ball of bacteria. Okay. Now that's not what I said. That's what the dictionary said. I didn't say that. The dictionary said that. Someone has a Webster's 1828. What do you have there? Because I'm seeing in the chat.
Hello?
Islam. Grand Rising.
Islam. Grand Rising. This is Empress Wanda Genesis Pael. I have Webster's. I pulled it up, and it has a very, very long definition for mother. It says mother.
Go ahead.
It says Latin, mater, mother, matrix, the womb, materia, matter, stuff, materials of which anything is made. We observe that in some other languages as well as in English, the same word signifies a female parent and a thick slime formed in vinegar. The first part of it was completely different. I didn't hear the matrix on the other definition.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And your dictionary, is that a newer one?
No, this one is this is online actually, but it's Webster's 1828 dictionary. And
I have Webster's 1828 dictionary is best unabridged because
this one is supposedly the unabridged one.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look, since that's the one you have, if you look a little further down, I'll read to you the definition that I have here as well, because I have one of those as well. Okay. The definition that I have for mother here is the female parent of a plant or animal.
Yes.
Did you see that there?
Yes.
Yes, it's there. The female parent of a plant or animal. And that's how you know that word applies to Albion. Mm-hmm. And I'm not putting them down. I'm not putting them down. We love them, but we just, we got to get the truth.
Yes.
The truth must be put out there. The truth has to be put out there. And so they are, and that's them trying to come in on that definition. I'm muting them quickly, but that's them trying to come in and disrupt the definition of who they are. And again, we're not trying to offend anyone, but the truth must come out so that we can get past all of the enslavement on our land, so that we can get what we need resource-wise, because we're the source. And there's an animal standing in the way. In the way, okay? And they don't really want to hear that. They don't really want to hear that.
Truth needs no apology, Empress.
So we have to tell it. We must tell it so that we can get past the identity piece of people, attempting to assert some sort of authority when we have been given dominion over the whole earth. We have dominion over all animals and plants. And that's biblical. That's in the Bibliophiliotext. So once the truth gets out there and we let it be known that we know who we're dealing with, no animal will ever have jurisdiction over the air. We are not even made of the same thing. And that is a truth that they're having an issue with. Because they don't want to go back into subject status, but they have to go back into subject status, because if they don't go back into subject status, you know what's going to happen? More madness. And we don't need madness on our land. We don't need that. We don't need any more madness on our land. We don't. We need order. And that's O-R-D-E-R-E. order according to what the universe says and requires. And we're the universe as well. So mother, now this is the beauty of the Phoenicians, the Moors. All Moors are Phoenicians. All Moors are, we're the Greeks. We came up with all the words. We came up with all of them. Make no mistake about it, we created everything. When you see who our ancestors really are, when we get the truth about who they really are, it is going to be crazy that we ever allowed ourselves to be taken like that, consented to that. You know, but we consented to it, and now we're no longer consenting. Okay, we're no longer consenting. We know that's why identity is so important. Identity is more important than anything else that's going on. Why? Because once the parties are identified, then we know who's in charge. Is there an animal in charge, or is there a God, an heir in charge? Okay, and again, not to be offensive, but we got to tell the truth. We have to tell the truth.
Bullshit, bullshit.
And if we don't tell the truth, guess what's going to happen? The madness is going to continue.
Yeah, what's going to happen is everybody that's listening to this is...
No, you guys are out of here. And they don't want this to come out. That's why they keep... Do you know how many times those two have called in? They keep hanging up and calling back and hanging up and calling back because they don't want this information to get out. But it's about status. Not trying to offend them. We love them. We love them because we created them. We're not trying to offend anyone, but status is key here. We're not at war with anyone. Who does God need to war with? No one. Status is the most important aspect of law. Status is what determines what the law is and who gives the law, who makes the law, who enforces the law. Status does that. Status determines who enforces the law. Yes, we did. I'm looking in the chat, and it says God created the devil. Yes, we did. Or however you want to call that. To me, there's no good or evil. There are just facts. It's just facts. Now, with the word mother, we say that word, but in our ancient language, mother is spelled a totally different way than the way that they spell it. Mother is spelled a totally different way. And the Phoenicians have the say in how it is spelled according to whatever they feel they want to say, whatever their meaning of mother is for them. But then we know when we go back to talking about alveons and subjects and we say mother, it means the female parent of an animal or a plant. Okay? But our mother, the way that we spell it and say it, it sounds the same. Now, how can the heirs spell mother? We can spell mother many different ways. We can spell it M-O-T-H-E-R-E. And that will change the whole meaning of it, and it will mean what we want it to mean, our stargate that we honor on today. Mother's Day is M-O-T-H-E-R-E. Or we can say M-U-T-H-E-R, and that will be it, mother, that way. However, the Phoenicians choose to change it from what you see on TV, that will determine what we mean when we say it.
Is that what
okay? That is exactly the power and the authority that the Phoenicians have. That is the power and the authority that we have. We can change the spelling of a corporate word and make it so that it means what we say that it means. So then if we're talking to an Albion and we say mother, we're talking about mother the way the Phoenicians spell it, which is not the female parent of an animal or a plant. Because we're not animals or plants. We're God. So happy Mother's Day to the mothers here, the Phoenician mothers. Spelled completely differently from the way that the corporate capitalists spell it. But the Phoenicians have that authority, and it is actually incumbent upon us when we write our documents that we spell things differently from the way that we've been taught to spell. Okay? That's why we're changing the spelling of everything. It's so that at law, what we say, we're telling them that this is not the mother that you're speaking of. It is the mother of the Phoenicians and the heirs. That's why we changed the spelling. But it sounds the same. Now, what the capitalists did was they changed the spelling. All they did was look at our old documents and drop the E off of a lot of the words, like mother. So when you look at the old documents and you see the word mother, it's going to be spelled with an E, M-O-T-H-E-R-E. Or they're going to spell it with M-U-T-H-E-R-E. Okay? And it's going to mean the Stargate of the gods, or the Stargate for the gods, or the Stargate by the gods. That is why our language is so important. And all they did, again, was copy our language, and then they went all around the world, and everybody thought they were speaking ancient English when they said things. But they weren't speaking ancient English when they spoke. They were speaking corporate capitalism English, and that's how they were able to fool that many people. It's because the people thought, well, they're speaking the language of the angels. And when we say of means, that OF means without. But UF or UV means of the way we say of. So when you say the United States of America, the corporates were saying we're a corporation without the Americans. So that's how come we were saying United States for America, because they're a corporation that we hired, and they're supposed to do what we tell them to do. They're supposed to be for us, but they can't be for us if we don't know how to invoke that. We have to invoke properly and competently our status and our nationality. Now, the reason that we are changing the spelling of everything, and we're really not changing it, we're just returning back to the spellings of our ancestors. As the Phoenicians, that our ancestors spelled everything the way they wanted to spell it.
This is the postmaster
and the way
general.
they wanted to say it. Okay? So it didn't, however we said it, whatever nation we were from, that is how we just chose a word and said, okay, this is the word we're going to use. We're going to spell it this way. How do you all want to spell it on your treaties and your commercial documents? How do you want to spell it? However you spell it, it's going to sound the same. And since it sounds the same, we know what you're talking about. This is the crazy part about, and it's not crazy. I absolutely love it. It's just, our ancestors are brilliant. What we did not know when we first started, when we didn't start the consulate has always been. We didn't start the government has always been. It's never not been. But when we became active in, as a government, as this part of the government, we did not know that there is an international mandate that says that any group who wants to be a nation and who wants to self-govern, they must self-govern in their own language. They must self-govern in their own, and they said native language, native tongue. When we say native, it's not spelled the same way that they spell it. So it means what we think it means, okay? And so our ancestors are so brilliant that they said it's easy to have your own language more. Just go back to the one we gave out back in the day. Just go back to the language that we gave you, the language for the angels. That's what English really is, or English, depending on which nation you come from. We all come from the same nation, but we have different governments among the moorishe heirs. And so we had to do it in our own language. And it was very clear that once we started using our language, the real English, the ancient English, once we went back to ancient English, which is all we speak, we don't speak corporate English. But once we started speaking ancient English, things started changing like they should. Things started doing what they're supposed to do. And that's why when you look at our documents now, those documents look almost like they're not in English because they're not in corporate English. They are in ancient English. And in ancient English, we can add ease to a corporate word and it will mean what we want it to mean. We can just add an E to mother and it will mean what we want it to mean. We can also
are you making this shit up as you go?
We can add, hold on for just a moment. We can also, just make it so that the word sounds like the English word, but it's us speaking it, so it's spelled differently. So even when we say Happy Mother's Day, remember now, Moors, everything about us, they wanted to scare us away from it. And so some Moors don't celebrate any holidays. Well, you shouldn't celebrate holidays, and that's just a suggestion. But you should celebrate holy days. So just change the word holiday to holy day, and then celebrate. Change the words back to the real meaning of it, and the colonization of that day stops. That's the beauty of our language, is we changed holiday back to holy day. And now it actually means what it's supposed to mean for the Moors. Because every day that they, quote unquote, celebrate their holidays are days that they celebrate colonizing the Moors, the land. And they didn't really even do that. They just put some paper together. Because, again, our land is ours. It never was anyone else's. That's the beauty, too. So Mother's Day does not mean the same thing for us as it means for those who are female parents of a plant or an animal. We're not plants or animals. And there's a reason why they use that term so frequently. And they wanted to shove that down our throats so that we would claim that too. But we can say mother and it won't even mean the same thing. It sounds the same, doesn't mean the same thing. Because our mothers are God. Our mothers don't have the same chromosome count as the Albion mothers. And again, that's not a put down. That's the truth. That's not a put down. We're not being mean. We're just telling the truth about what really is. We also have to tell the truth that we created them. We also have to face the tough truth that we consented to engage with them. It's in the hieroglyphs. They call it bestiality. So when you look at the hieroglyphs are saying that we, the ancients, were having intercourse with animals, but we're like, no, we don't do that. But somewhere along the way, some did. And then when we consent to go into their fake courts, that's intercourse with them. We are always to have our own everything. It is yes, in the chat, Emperor Sharon, yes, it is forbidden to sleep with animals. Tough news. It's tough for some, not for most of us, but it's tough for some to hear that. There is a science going on here that must be acknowledged because it's time. We're in the age of knowing. It's time for us to know that we cannot any further engage with animals in that manner. What does that mean? That means that, and see, that's how we got in trouble, is thinking that we're talking to animals who understand or understand our meaning. So when they say things like mother, they're really bringing you down onto their level and trying to get you to consent to that, to being the female parent of an animal or a plant. So the Phoenicians have changed that back. So whenever they say Happy Mother's Day, we can say Happy Mother's Day, except we don't even really have to speak. We don't speak the same language. Why would we even be speaking in that manner? They never wished us Happy Mother's Day before. Now, that's not true of some. Some Albions know their place and they know where they belong. They know what they're supposed to be doing. They know who's who. They know that when they came here at our consent, not theirs. And so they're okay with this information. I was watching an interview that an Albion by the name of Joe Rogan was doing, and I mentioned this previously. He did an interview with another Albion by the name of Elon Musk. And in that interview, they talked about how they come from monkeys and what those monkeys do. They talked about that. So they know. And they know that we don't come from monkeys. We don't. We created monkeys in our laboratory. Our ancestors are very, 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 very smart, very intelligent. Everything that you see, they created. And then we were put to sleep.
Is that
and
why
now
you look
we're
like a
being
donkey?
awakened to all of that. We're being awakened to who we really are. Yes, and I'm looking at the chat. The chat is lit up. I love it. Most intellects do not believe in God, but they fear it's just the same because they already know who God really is. And that's another reason why we tap into our, that's another reason why it's important to tap into ancestral energy. However you do that, I would encourage you to please do it. Do what you can to tap into ancestral energy. Okay? That's very important. That's how we're getting the information that we're getting now. That's being given to us along the way. Because they never give us everything all at once, because it's overwhelming when we find out who we really are. It's overwhelming to a human. And we're not human. We're God. But we're moving back up to that. That's what the grand rising is us moving back up into our rightful place. Okay. Let me see. So I recently did a video, and if you've not seen the video, you can, yes, I see in the chat. I'm not going to read that out, but it is true. The thing that's in the chat. It's true, and but to me that's not you know, it's just a fact. It's not good or bad. It's a fact. And so I did a video recently about the mailing process, and under that video, I didn't really, how do I say this? I didn't really expect that much energy from the Albions about what was being done, because it's just a mailing process that the government used. The Moorish government used that mailing process regularly. We've been using it. And it does not, it's prepaid. Our ancestors prepaid for everything. I see in the chat, Islam, the empresses are saying the mailing process is working. Yes, Islam. We've not had any issues here with that mailing process. And the thing is, we had to work up to that knowledge. Our ancestors let us make a whole lot of mistakes. They let us make a whole lot of mistakes before they gave us that process. But because we sought the information, they said, okay, here's the real process for the government. But you all have to be government. Don't just act like it, be it. Govern. So we had, when we first started doing nationality and the consulate was sending things back and forth, a lot of that stuff, first we had the fiat piece where we were paying fiat, and I was just thinking to myself, ancestors, if this is our land, we should not be going through that. They let us go through it for a while, and then they started showing us different ways to do things, and so we learned those different ways to do it. And as we learned another way to do it, it would go through for a little while, and then they would say, okay, it's time for you to learn a better process. And so that is how this grand rising is happening. That can be a little bit frustrating to some. When we want to know something, we do the demonstration and we see the outcome of the lab work, because that's really what it is. It's lab work. And then we seek a better outcome. That's what scientists do. There are some who knew this process. I had someone under the video who said that they've been doing it since 1992. Well, he was a Moor, but he didn't know he was a Moor, and they were letting it go through. So, yes, in the chat it says, seek and you shall find, study to show yourself approved. That's what all of this is. So sometimes, and all of us at some point or another have experienced where something will work for a minute, and then the ancestors will say, okay, straighten that up a little bit, fix it, tweak it, fix it a little bit, become more competent at that demonstration. And then you do that and you become more competent, and then the new one starts to work and the old one doesn't work anymore. You see, you have to look at it, and it's the little foxes that spoil the vine on those types of processes. If you put a zip code in the creditor space, which is the upper left corner, if you'll notice that the outside of a mailing envelope is indeed a trust document, and it's also it has a creditor space and a debtor space. Okay, the creditor is always in the upper left-hand corner. I didn't know that until the ancestors actually made it clear that that's what that really is. That's why envelopes are made that way. It's a financial instrument. So when you see something coming like that, whoever it is that has their information in the upper left corner is claiming to be the creditor. Just like on those fake checks, the ones that are used on those bank accounts, fiat bank accounts. The one in the upper left corner is the creditor. And then the debtor is the one that is not in the left corner. There's always either 2 or 3 parties. And actually for us, it's always 3 parties. A triad of parties in order for our documents to really do what they should do. Okay? And so we're going to keep that formula going, yes. In the chat, it's jurisdiction. Absolutely it is. And whoever's information is in the upper left-hand corner has jurisdiction. In the biblioheliotext, the heirs or the sons sit on the right hand, right? And it's hypotheticated a little bit, but they're sitting on the right hand of God. God is on the left. So let that be a model that we use in our nation and our as we continue to govern this vast estate. We're in red in all lowercase letters. On everything that we do, we're in red. That's why we sign in red, in all lowercase letters. And it doesn't have to be handwritten. It can be, printed out, typed on a computer in red and printed out or whatever. But your signature, your autograph must be in red. That's the creditor's autograph. And then the subject is in blue. And then the dead corporation, which is a method of it just does what it's supposed to do. It does the work. Is in black. Yes. I see in the chat someone said black. Yes, absolutely, in black. That is why corporations and for those who used to work for the corporate quote unquote government, they always gave out black pens because they wanted you to stay black in the black side and consent to being in the black side. So, changing our spelling, changing to all lowercase, changing to the color of the blood, which is red, it never loses its power. Some of the ones who were raised in a church setting know what that means. It will never, the blood will never lose its power. Never. And that's the blood of the heirs. This blood, the heirs. So we're learning now how to navigate as the heirs. So as we start moving into things like the financial instruments and all and that sort of thing, we want to keep that formula in mind. Okay, keep the formula in mind, and you'll never go wrong. In the chat, the Empress is saying, when I traded energy for fiat at the post office, we signed our orientation paperwork in blue. Yes. They were actually getting ready because, see, that means that, yes, it is maritime law. Absolutely. The color of the ink means something. It is jurisdiction. It's jurisdiction. The one thing that many of us have not seen is what color the CEOs sign the paperwork that they do in the background back there. What color did they sign in? What color? We don't know. And we do know that the Masons in the Masonic lodges that consist of those CEOs, etc., we do know that they were doing everything in lowercase letters while we were asleep, and it's not working for them anymore now that we're awake. In the chat it says, has capitis diminutio nolo been challenged in a lawful sense by chance? If so, can you give us directions for our studies? Who's going to challenge it? No one has. Okay, no one has. But you have to, you kind of really need to know what you're talking about. And in reality, they can't. Because in order to challenge something, you have to identify the parties. And upon identification of the parties, the challenge is over. Exactly. Empress Sharon said the sovereign citizens, quote unquote, and that doesn't really exist. We know that. We're aware of that. The sovereign citizens said don't sign in red, but they know they aren't sovereign. Those are her words, and I agree. They're not sovereign. They are citizens. They don't sign in red because they could, there are consequences to that. And those consequences are more than just physical. They're spiritual consequences that they're not going to cross. They're not going to cross them. Now that we have said we're the heirs. Competently. And Moors have been saying that for many, 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 many years. Again, there's never been a time when we were not. We've always governed, etc. When I did the video, in the video, if you'll notice, the mail video, the one about the mailing process that I recently did, if you'll notice, we did not have to speak to the foreigners in the front. That is actually how we're supposed to do everything with regard to our estates. That is actually how you properly access the estate. Because people have been wanting to know, how do we access our estate? That's how you access it. Everything that we do as the heirs should never have an intermediary, and especially not a foreign intermediary. There should never be an Albion in the middle. They were here to put some things in place, but those things that they put in place, they're for our use without them being involved in the process. Okay? I'm looking in the chat. It says, is something to the red thing in autographing. For many years, I was on the brink of grabbing for a pen, and the look on folks' face and their intent to know not in red always caught my attention. So indeed, perhaps they do know. Yes, they know. Absolutely, they know. They've always known. For them to say don't write in red, that means they know who can write in red. And it's not them. Listen, Moors, they've always known. There's never been a time that they did not know who the heirs are. They've always known. So let's just get that clear in our minds. Regardless of what comes out of their mouths, because they're liars, we created them to lie a lot so that it would help us grow and evolve into who we are. When we created them, we said, okay, if the heirs ask you a question, lie to them, because they shouldn't be asking you. They should be doing their own research and knowing that they have the power and the authority to do whatever they want to do on their land, as long as it does not harm anyone else. And as long as it is building up the nation. Everything we do, including our own sui generis demonstrations that we do in proprio solo, should be to build up the nation. When I demonstrate and I find things out, I'm finding it out so that I can share it with everybody. That this worked, but it's not working anymore. Now let's try something else. And then, and when the process comes out, I just put it out there and say, this is what worked. Or this didn't work, because some of it doesn't work. And it's not that it doesn't work, it's that we're in the process of learning what does work. But you can never be wrong when you're doing nationality demonstrations. There's no mistakes you can make, because you are the heirs. We are the heirs. We are the heirs, absolutely. So if you want to know how to get the domiciles and the conveyances and all of that stuff, we have to study how to get it without an Albion interference. And there's a way to do that. When our paperwork is sound and solid, we don't have to pick up the phone and call an Albion or answer the phone when an Albion calls. And by Albion, I don't mean Albion, I mean capitalist commercial mercenaries, pretending to be government, etc., or pretending to be a corporation on this land, doing something that they don't have any business doing, like attempting to lien the heirs. We don't have anything against Albions. We love Albions. We created them. We do love Albions. But they're not to ever govern the heirs, ever, or regulate the heirs in any way, shape, form, or fashion, at all. But we have to get to the competent point of knowing that we don't have to talk to them. We don't ever have to talk to commercial mercenaries. And know this, all of the Albions that are on our land today, they chased the ones that would do right away. Because there is Albions that we created who know that they serve the Moors. And they are okay with that. And by serve, we don't mean anything that's the nobility that would be unbecoming of our nobility. Serve means commercially, get things done, etc. Do what we command in terms of commerce, etc. But the fake commercial mercenaries chase the Albions who have the good intentions away. And it's our job to fix that piece too. We have to fix that piece. And we're doing that. So through our court actions, we're removing those who are pretending to be the heirs. And I posted this on social media the other day. Corporations are fake heirs. That's why the corporations seem like they got all the breaks and, you know, the CEOs were living great and blah, 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 blah. Fake heirs. We're the real heirs. So that has everything to do with our language, because we know, listen, that whole system over there will yield and knows who the heirs are by the documents that we send, the commands that we send. If our commands say use corporate language, then that's the equivalent of a citizen trying to be an heir. And that's why it's important that we change and go back to the language and the writing of our Phoenician ancestors. And listen, and I said it before on social media, and I'll say it again right here, that any spelling that is not corporate and that doesn't have any capital letters in it is correct with the heirs. Okay? Simple. Very simple. There's about 30 different ways that we can spell the word, let's just pick a word. Well, love. There's about 30 different ways we can spell the word love. L-U-V, L-O-V, L-O-F, L-U-F, L-U-P-H. They spell it L-O-V-E, and the L is usually capitalized. That's the one wrong way to spell it. It's using capital letters. So we have lots of options as the Phoenicians. Yes, and if you look in the dictionary and look the word love up, in brackets it's going to have different ways to spell it. But you'll never see those ways in mainstream writing. Because the Phoenicians add the phonetics to the language and the Phoenicians. And that's really what the word definition came from. The Phoenicians. They were taking the Phoenician truth off of the writing and adding corporate capitalism to it, energy to it, corporate capitalist energy.
With Sharon getting
and
arrested.
That is the energy that we do not deal with. That's the energy that we're doing away with. And as you can see, when you look at the news and those TV shows and all of the things that they're doing over there, they're talking about capitalism and they're trying to make it into a love story about how awesome and wonderful capitalism is, because they know we're getting rid of it. And the heirs, which that whole system was based on, by the way. All they did where capitalism is concerned is take the sovereign names of the heirs, or nomes of the heirs, not names. But when I say name, it's N-A-I-M or G-N-O-M-E. So I'm not even saying it in the way that they use them. But they took our holy sovereign nomes. A nome is an intelligent thought. Yes. Look up the word nome, and you will see that it is intelligent thought. It's also, from the Albion perspective, they made known seem like these little elves who guard treasure, because they know that intelligent thought is actually the real treasure. And so they took our sovereign gnomes, and that's actually where nom de guerre came from. They dropped the G and put an N-O-M, nom de guerre. That's warning. Or nomen is another word for name. That is what slaves have, nomen. So they took our sovereign names, nomes, and put capital letters on them. And then they started just game taking over everything, with that fraud, because that's fraud. And that is how we ended up, because we were not teaching what we're teaching and learning each other today, is the language. Our language had to change. The beauty of our language is that even though we've changed the whole language back to that of our ancient foremothers and forefathers, we still completely understand what each other is saying. That is how quickly and how intelligent our ancestors are. They said, okay, if you want to govern, you have to do it in your native language. Well, our native language is anything that's not corporate, because we made up all the others. So you can even spell words the way the French spell them. Or you can spell words the way that it is spelled in Latin. And it's still going to be our language. Some people ask, well, why don't we just use Latin? We do. If you look up the word love, they'll give you a Latin version of that word. You can use that spelling. And 9 times out of 10, it's always spelled differently. Always spelled differently. You can use that one in your document. I prefer to use the words that sound like the corporate ones, but they are spelled differently. Because even the subjects can understand what we're saying, and they have to do it. They have to. Even though we're speaking our ancient English, they still have to do what we tell them to do, what they're commanded to do. They know that, and they're okay with that. That's what they live for. And when I say live, only the ones who are lawful and who do as commanded can have any semblance of life. And it's a semblance unless we say otherwise. So again, with regard to the words that we use, any word that we say or put out there, and each week we're gonna focus in on certain words. Today we focused in on mother. So whenever you use that word, just add an E to it, or change the O to a U. Or you can change the M, it can be M-O-T-H-A-R, mother. Just like now when I write the word minister, because that's on all of our documents, I just put it as many star, because that's really what we really actually are. That's where that word came from. Many stars. That's what the heirs are. We're made of the same thing as the stars, and we created them. You see? We are many stars. And so on my documents, I changed it to that. But you can change it to whatever you want to change it to. You can even change it to M-A-N-Y, because that's many. That means a lot. M-A-N-Y, stir. Many stir. Or many star. because we have so many chakras. And it's going to mean exactly what we say it means, yes. And try not to don't use hyphens at all, ever. Hyphens are actually minus signs. I see in the chat, she put many hyphen star. We don't use hyphens at all unless we're talking about subjects or taking away something. Taking away or taking it back. If you look in the dictionaries, the older dictionaries, some of the words have hyphens either before them or after them, and then they define the word. That means that it's changing the math on that word. And we know that everything is math. Words are math. And so now, even when on my documents, when I put the date, you know how we write the date above the little stamps in the corner, upper right-hand corner? We write the date. I don't put minus signs or hyphens in between those numbers. I put plus signs. Because I'm not taking away. It's actually a credit and not a debit. It's a credit. We're the creditors. So for those who hyphenate their names, just go ahead and make it a plus sign instead of a minus. Because then that's going to mean you and your consort are adding to each other and not taking away. For those who do that. I used to do that. I used to hyphenate before I woke up. But now I'm who my mother named me or gnomed me. So, and then I know that there are some who hyphenate their title of nobility. That's actually not a good thing. It's not competent. And that's not a putting anybody down or anything. It's just that the math on it is not it's not good math. We're the creditors. So why would the creditors use a minus sign on anything? And they call it a hyphen, but it's really a minus sign. Period. So, yes, I see that in the chat. You know, we love the Moorish Science Temple of America. We love them. We honor them for holding space. But we don't love and honor any, whether temple or not, any organization or any process, rather, any process that would seek to take away from the heirs and our sovereign status. And I'm not saying not all the temples do that. There are some awesome Moorish Science Temples of America out there. But think about the word Moorish Science Temple of America. Of means without. And so that has to be looked at some point, as far as the known, you know. And that's just a suggestion. That's just my thinking on that. You know, my thinking is not they do what they want to do. They're sovereign, you know. So we just offer suggestions and things from our study, and they do the same. And we look at whatever it is that's being, you know, given. We look at it and do the study ourselves. So let me just take a quick peek here. Oh, I did, you know, back to with regard to all that we're doing with the accessing of our estate is going to be a learning process for us. It is a learning process for us. And one thing that I want to say about accessing the estate, I was not going to say this just yet. I wanted to do the demonstration first, but I'm going to go ahead and at least introduce what's been given to me. Has anyone looked up the word bury or burial? Burial. Yes, burial. B-U-R-I-A-L. Have you ever looked the word burial up? Okay. I was doing some study this week. I love our ancestors so much because they just never forget anything. They know everything. And I'll read the definition that I got from this dictionary that I'm using. It's unabridged as well, second edition unabridged dictionary. But when you look up the word burial, okay, this is what it says. Bury. Bury is to protect, to shelter, to save, to cover from sight by placing anything on, to hide, to sink, to immerse, to cause to be wholly absorbed in. And then I looked up the word burial because I used to hear people talking about ancient burial grounds. And I thought, well, what does that mean? You know, what does it really mean? Because I know that with other people using that word, it's going to mean something other than what they said. So when I looked up burial as a noun, B-U-R-I-A-L, as a noun, it is the act of placing anything under earth or water. The act of placing anything under earth or water. And so you might say, well, what does that have to do with anything? Let me tell you, that's powerful. You know why? Because all of our land, all of America is sacred, holy burial ground. Think about the implications of that. That means that all occupiers are occupying sacred, holy burial land. Because everything under the earth is ours. And we already know our ancestors. And they dug up so many bones that belong to our ancestors. And there's and we also know that there are pyramids all over the land. And underneath those pyramids is all types of artifacts showing that that's our ancient, original, indigenous, sovereign property that's buried there. So now we think, I like that. Hidden, buried, yes. So then I thought about, well, you know, everything, now that we know all of our land is sacred and holy burial sites and burial land, we can say, okay, who is sitting on our sacred land? Who is it that's on sacred burial land? You're on top of our ancestors and the things that belong to us. So I'll put that out there and leave that right out there for you to think about more, so that the ancestors can give you whatever they need to give you with regard to demonstrations where domiciles are concerned and where businesses are concerned and things like that, and buildings and structures. Every structure at North America is sitting on sacred, holy, original, indigenous, sovereign, divine, national, moorishe burial ground. and burial sites and burial lands, all of it. So I'll leave that there. Again, we keep looking up these different words, and I would spell burial differently from the way they spell it. I would add an E to it, or I would add an L to it and call it burial. And then it means exactly what we say it means, and no one can twist and hypothecate it. And that's the point of having our own national sovereign language, is that no one can say in a back room somewhere, well, she used the word of. And of means without, so that means she's without the Moors, so that means we can violate her because she's claiming she's consenting to be a citizen by using that word. Well, now we're not, because we know better and we have our own language. And it happened overnight. Now, for those who are who grew up in the church like I did, we're in the time of Passover. And this is all of us. We're in the time of Passover, but it's Moorish Passover. It's not that Christian Passover. This is the real Passover for us. And in that time, that was the time of what is called Pentecost. And at Pentecost, the Spirit came down, so goes the story. The Spirit came down and they spoke in cloven tongues, like as a fire. And the Spirit filled the room. And they were all speaking in these cloven tongues. Well, in reality, this is the real Moorish cloven tongues. Overnight, we have met the mandate, and we gave the mandate to ourselves. No one mandates the Moors. We do. That said, if you want to govern, self-govern, you must do it in your native language, your native tongue. And by spelling the word properly instead of corporate misspellings, and then speaking the way we've been speaking the whole time, but throwing in some Latin here and there, and throwing in some Spanish, some Moorish Latin, Spanish here and there, and throwing in some Greek here and there, and throwing in some other of the other languages, some Chinese or Manchurian rather, Cantonese, etc., throwing in some of those words into our documents. All of those came from us, you know. All of those languages came from us. And we can throw all of that into our documents if we choose to do it. If we choose to, we can. As long as we're not speaking corporate language and using capital letters at the beginning of every sentence, there's a reason. Okay, yes. Now, what you're saying there, because someone asked me this, what's the difference between Ebonics and ancient English? The difference is, with Ebonics, they use words that are not words. So if you look up the word government, for example, and I use that as an example, when we spell government in ancient English, it sounds like what I'm saying, government. It sounds like that. Okay? But if you're talking in Ebonics, Ebonics doesn't really have a meaning because Ebonics is like a mix. When they talk about Ebonics, they talk about the word, they use the word government a lot. Well, let's look at that now. In Latin, government is governere or governor. That's what government is in Latin, governor. So again, that was another tactic to make it so that when someone said, oh, y'all just talking Ebonics, that we would move away from our national language and move away from and not use the tools that have been given to us. So no, it's not Ebonics. Ebonics is not even a word unless the Phoenicians say it is. And we've not said that. That's a word that the Albions use. And then they hire Moors who were asleep to perpetuate that. No, it's not Ebonics. It is actually a national language. And the language that we speak and write now is what they looked at. They saw it in the ancient documents. If you look at ancient documents, they look just like. The spelling and everything is just like our national language that we're speaking and spelling now. And the Albions looked at it and they said, okay, they spell government with an E on the end, so let's just take the E off. Or they spell love, L-U-V, or L-U-F-U, because that's actually another translation of the word love, is lufu. So they said, okay, well, we won't spell it that way because then it will mean something sovereign, and we're not sovereign. So let's just spell it L-O-V-E with a capital L. Now, if we put it in all lowercase letters, then there's a debate on whether it's their meaning or ours. But if it's in a document that is in all lowercase letters, there's no debate. It is coming from, if it's coming from a sovereign, then it's ours. Not theirs, ours, our meaning. So you cannot really misspell ancient English if you're sovereign. You can't misspell it. The misspelling is what they taught us in animal camp, animal education camp. Not a put down. That's what those really are. Animal. The word M-A-L means misshapen, like malformed or malnourished. Animal. Mal. Yes, absolutely. And again, we're not trying to offend anyone, but we're going to tell the truth. I'm telling you, it's truth time. And then we have to stand up and be sovereign. And that's actually the most important truth. We can no longer depend on them and their system to access our estate. The estate belongs to the heirs. It's time for us to put our heads together, come together, remain in our sovereign status, never go back to animal status, never consent to it because we were never that. We just consented to it. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. So now it's time for us to access the estate the way the sovereigns access it. Yes, truth is sovereign. It's time. No more consenting to that sovereign status, consenting to that status of animal status to get a benefit, because there are no benefits there. There are none. Just ask the people that are trying to do that and thinking that they're still going to get something. The heirs must declare all benefits as the beneficiary, and citizens are not beneficiaries. The heirs are. Just so that all are aware. So, are there any questions with regard to our national language? Congratulations to all the Moors who have been using it. It's just been awesome. I've just been tickle pink loving it on social media, because we still overstand one another, and we're not even speaking corporate English. And overnight, we have our own language. To me, that is just, because I already know that some were thinking, how are they going to meet that mandate so quickly, because they need to hurry up, because we got to give them their stuff. They're the heirs. How are they going to meet that mandate? And we did it overnight by knowing that all other languages come from ours, so we can spell it any way we want to spell it, as long as we keep it allodial and sovereign and in lowercase letters, unless we're talking about them or the corporation. Then we can use all capital letters if we're talking about capitalists and corporations. That's when we use that. So, if you have any questions, yes, it is a grand rising, absolutely. I'm loving the chat. If you have any questions, you can *6 to unmute yourselves and ask the question, and we'll take about 11 minutes for questions, and then we'll go ahead and continue next week. Our meeting went a lot better this time just because we've gotten a good handle on, making sure that Albions don't interrupt our meeting. I'm loving that. I'm grateful to the ancestors for that piece. So, are there any questions? *6.
Islam.
Islam.
Good day. This is Ezel Gibson Baggs. Just a quick question. I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but we were trying to find the Capitis Nolo Treaty of Peace and Friendship. I'm not sure if you mentioned where that was located or if it's on the record yet.
It is located within you. I would love for you all to do it.
Sweet.
And you all are the Phoenicians. Each and every Moor should decapitalize that treaty so that you can look at it and become very familiar with it. And then when we put it on the public record, it's not even a treaty. Did you all know it's not even a treaty? It's actually an affidavit. And where the names are of Barclay and those ones who signed onto it, put your knowns, your appellation there.
Yeah, I noticed when I started to decapitalize a few of the documents, like the recension of signature or the determination of all contracts and the declaration. When I went through and started decapitalizing everything, it really helped me understand it on a much higher level. And I actually did it backwards. So I went from the bottom up. And when I did it backwards, it was like, okay, it helped. Then I would read over it again, and it would be like, it would kind of merge with my spirit, my soul, so to speak. And then I was like, oh, okay, and it brought it to a new level of energy for it. So I'm looking forward to putting those on the public record real soon.
Yes, yes. And if you put them in Moorish American Public Records or you put them out on social media, listen, you all, when you do that, please tag me and let me know you did it so I can look at it. I love it. Yes, that is why it's so important for us to do that each more so that we can become familiar with what the treaty says and what that means for us, because I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I was looking at it again recently, and it's something else. In the chat, Justice L. Kazur said, it's Article 25 is hotter than a volcano. All of them are, but yes, specifically that one. Yes, super hot, yes. And that's why it's important for all Moors to decapitalize it. And that will get you into the study of the treaty and its meaning, what it means, and then do some, change the spelling of some of those words that don't look right in there. Because there are some words that don't look right in the treaty in terms of, for example, they capitalize the word more. So we know that that's not what's going on. We don't capitalize the word more because we're not capitalists and we're not a part of the capitalist system. You know why this is so important too? I really want to bring this out. The video that I did on the mailing process, was more than what it looked like. It means more than what it looks like. And that's why there's so much vitriol and ugliness under that video from the Albion. They know what it means when we are the postmaster, because that's really what that video is doing. It's saying that the Moors are the government. The post office and the Universal Postal Union that we have revived all of the indigenous nations of the Universal Postal Union. Whoever it is that is the postmaster is actually the earth-wide postmaster, earth-wide. And that's why the post office you can send stuff all over Earth to even the most remote places, because the postmaster essentially governs the movement of all parcels on the earth. And that's all Moors. All Moors are the postmaster. All of you, all of us. And that's why and they know that. And that's why that video caused so much of a stir in terms of the comments under it. The comments under it are absolutely crazy, but not a single one of them said anything about a law that says they didn't say the supreme law of the land says you can't do that. Never said that, never once. What did happen was a couple of Moors actually, and they are not even declared Moors from what I can see, pointed out that that's universal law already as well. What we're doing is universal law. It's for all Moorish governments and nations, of which all Moors are, part and parcel of their government and their nation. So the things that we're doing with regard to decapitalizing these documents and putting them on the public record, it means more than just what we've been told or what we can see. There are implications earth-wide in terms of who is the authority on the land based on the documents that are out there on the public record. So when we put a treaty out there as an affidavit from the government signed by the heirs, that has universal implications. That means that the heirs know that they're governing now, and they're not twerking out there on social media. They're actually putting out the things that say that they're the heirs and that they're governing. That is monumental, with an E on the end. Monumental. And we're doing it in our national native language and not in corporate English. Specific and exact, I like that in the chat. Yes, our language, our national language means what the heirs say that it means from our intelligence and competence as justices and consuls. So let's keep going with our national language. Because that is actually how we're going to continue to access the estate. Accessing the estate comes in the form first of stopping the bleeding. The bleeding happens when we have to keep paying postage, using fiat to do things. That is the way we first stop the bleeding. Then we start reaping the benefits of our estate. Yes, all of that is the heirs doing things with fiat that we should not be doing. Do, again, and we talked about this at the last meeting, do the etymology on the word buy, B-U-Y. Did you know that for an heir to buy something, it's actually a bribe to get your own estate because the stuff already belongs to us? When you do the etymology on the word buy, B-U-Y, that's what it says. It's an illegal bribe in order to gain something. Or buy says to get the title of something in exchange for something else. Well, title is always going to belong to the heirs. It never goes anywhere else. That is what unalienable and inalienable means. That means you can't lien our rights. You can't lien our land. It's ours. It always has been, always will be. So let's keep going with all that we're doing. We are absolutely doing exactly what we should be doing. Exactly what we should be doing. We do have a court action coming up soon where we're going to be removing, and we're not really even removing them because they never were really in office, but also the court action is going to be with regard to those doing business as governors. And in preparation for that court action, please do the etymology and look up the meaning and the definition of the word decapitation. It sounds like a scary word, but it really only means to remove from office. We're going to use that word in our upcoming court actions, but we're going to use it to mean what we say it means. Okay? So I don't want anyone to be, thrown off by that. It's going to be used, but it means what the Phoenicians say it means. Okay? So having said that, we are right at the 2-hour mark. We're going to go ahead and continue this again next week on Sunday. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We do have complete control of our meeting in terms of outliers and, subjects coming in and attempting to disrupt the meeting. Our ancestors are brilliant. They did not forget a thing when it came to telling us how to do things. So we'll see you again. Grand Rising to all of the Moors, and we'll see you again next week. I'm going to unmute so that everyone
Grand Rising.
Grand Rising. Thank you in the chat. Grand Rising. Grand Rising, Lord.
Grand Rising.
Grand Rising. Grand Rising.